YouTubers, and welcome to another Doctor Who action figure review. In today's review we're going to be looking at the latest classic series Underground Toys Forbidden Planet exclusive, which is the Special Weapons Dalek from Wave 2 of the Sound Effects Daleks. Now this Dalek actually came out in the UK slightly ahead of the other three Daleks from Wave 2, so let's take a quick look at the packaging. The figure comes packaged on a card back featuring the same design as seen on the Sound Effects Daleks Wave 1. Despite being released independently of Wave 2 here in the UK, the card still features the Wave 2 circle. The package is also quick to note that the Special Weapons Dalek features sound effects only. The back of the box features images of the rest of the Daleks in Wave 2, as well as a biography about the Daleks. Now this model of Dalek had previously been released without sound effects in the Remembrance of the Daleks box set, which included an Imperial Dalek, the Supreme Dalek, and a Renegade Dalek. Now, had this have just been any other Dalek, just with sound effects, I wouldn't have bought it, because it had already been released. However, because this Dalek is different, it meant that the sound effects were going to be different. It wasn't just going to be the same 70s, 80s Dalek chip that they'd used previously. So before we get into all the sounds and stuff, let's take a quick look at the articulation. Obviously it's a Dalek, so therefore there's not really much. The Dalek's on 3 wheels, the gun moves up and down, and the shoulder section pivots 360 degrees. So before we go into the sound effects, let's have a look at the details on this figure. Now if you had the previous version of the Special Weapons Dalek that came in the Remembrance of the Daleks set, then the top half of this Dalek is very similar to what you saw before. However, there have been a few slight changes. We still have this nice dirty wash over the gold sections of the shoulders, but if we look to the back of the Dalek, the dirt and weathering is far more subtle than it was on the previous version. Here you can see there are just some slight slashes of dirt and weathering across the top. However, if we compare this to the original version, you can see that the weathered effects were far more prominent. Now, I must say I do prefer the new version. I was never keen on this version because the lines of dirt were just too blocky and just too obviously painted on. So I think here, although the dirt is more minimal, it looks a lot neater. Another thing that I really like on this version, which you didn't really see so much on the other version, is this metallic sheen to the Dalek's gun. As you can see, over the black of the moulded plastic, there is some silver or bronze washes over the top, which gives it this nice metallic sheen. With the two Daleks side by side, you can see that this older version is just more of a black colour, whereas the metallic wash on this version really makes it look like a proper weapon. However, despite the improved paint job on the top half of the Dalek, the skirt section still suffers. Now, with the previous version, I did have a bit of an issue with the dirt and the oil that was meant to be seeping from the hemispheres and from the sections of the skirt. It didn't really look like it was dirty and oily. It just looked like the skirt had been speckled in between each hemisphere with a paintbrush. It just looks like someone has just washed black paint all the way down each side of the skirt. I think the trouble is perhaps the paint is far too dark. Maybe if it was a bit lighter, it might look a bit better. But it just looks like long black streaks. My brother saw it, and he said that it looked like a child had coloured in the skirt with a crayon. For some reason, it also seems worse on his left side. This side, the paint seems so much darker, and I've seen a few other people's Daleks, and it seems to be a common occurrence. So I have to say, I am disappointed that the skirt wasn't improved as much as it could have been. Another thing that makes this bizarre is that this hemisphere, which is actually the switch for the sound effects, doesn't even have any black wash around it. It's a minor gripe, but it did stand out to me inside the packaging. I'm going to have to go back to the original release and say that the wash on the skirt is better, and that's not even that great either. It just looks too dark on that new Dalek. So overall, the Dalek is very much the same as the previous release. The top half, the paint applications, much improved. The bottom half, I'm really not sure. I mean, is it worse? Is it better? I don't know. Part of me wants to say it's worse than the other version. Another part of me wants to try and say it's better. To be honest, I don't think either of them are great, and I don't really think they're ever going to get it right. So now let's take a look at the sound effects for this Dalek. So, like the previous Daleks from Wave 1, the switch is on the base, and one thing that was interesting about this Dalek, and the only reason why I bought this version, is because this Dalek doesn't talk in Remembrance of the Daleks, very famously. It just blows things up. So that meant that the Dalek was going to have completely different sound effects than the other Daleks released in Wave 1. All the other Daleks in Wave 2 had the exact same sound effects as heard in Wave 1. So that was just a gun sound effect, rather generic, not actually the gun sound effect used in the episode. Kind of weird that they didn't use the actual sound effect, because you can actually get that. You don't even need to rip it from the episode or anything. You can actually get it on one of the Radiophonic Workshop CDs. So it's kind of generic, but yeah, it sounds alright. And much like with the other Daleks that they've released, if you press it twice, you get an extra sound. So whereas with the other Daleks it's usually exterminate and then the gun noise, here you get the gun noise and that big explosion sound. Pretty cool. Now some of you are probably thinking, well, hang on a minute, this Dalek only has 2 sound effects, all the other Daleks have about 6 different phrases. Well, this Dalek also has a few hidden sound effects. Now if you switch the Dalek off and hold down the activator button for the speech and switch on like so, you'll hear a beep. So you need to remember to keep your thumb down on the hemisphere, turn on the power, and then wait for that little beep. So what happens next? Well, let's have a listen.
Vaporized. What is my target?
So as you can see, this Dalek does actually speak. Now, as I said, the Dalek doesn't talk in the episode, but I believe that in the target novelisation that this Dalek may speak, so this is just character options giving a voice to a Dalek that we don't actually hear talk. And I'll be honest, I really like it. I think it's a really clever and fun feature to have these secret sound effects hidden away. There's nothing on the packaging to say that there are secret sounds. There is nothing in the packaging to say how to activate these secret sounds. It really was just a very cool Easter egg. And I really do like what they've done with the voice. It has some really cool phrases. It's not just generic stuff. There's some really interesting stuff like the struggling to say I obey and target acquired, target vaporized. And then if you want to go back to the previous sound effects, just hold down the button like so, turn off the power, and then turn the power back on, and then the sound effects have gone back to their original version. So overall, I think this is a really fun Dalek. If you haven't got the Special Weapons Dalek from the previous set, I think this is definitely worth taking a look. So thank you for watching this review, guys. I hope it's been useful to you. Stay tuned for another review coming later this week, which will be the Chase Dalek Guard, also from Wave 2 of the SFX Daleks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.